Hello, everyone. Today is August 10th. This is SIG-Networking subproject Ingress NGINX, which means it is a CNCF project, and we adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. If you have any issues, please report those to myself or Ricardo, and our special guest today from SIG-Networking, Shane. Today, we're going to talk a lot, a lot about some of the open topics we have. We have a big release coming up with 112, which Marco has been working really hard on. We just released the latest 111 and 110. And with that, I think we should probably just go ahead and go into our open topics. We don't have any new members. And we did not get a chance to meet in September for various reasons, vacations and such. So I think with that, let's go ahead and I think my open question with 112 is, did we get everything completed that Ricardo told everyone we were going to complete in 112? As an open question. I think we did, because I think everything that we wanted to do was in one PR with enabling all of our security defaults, annotation validations, things like that.
Yeah, I wanted to deliver the crossplay stuff as well, but due to reasons, it's almost there, but not for 112.
Okay. Yeah, that one's fine, I think. I'm trying to find the email where you told everyone.
Yeah, I'll also try to. So 112, the image got promoted. Everything is set up already. It's just the release itself. I didn't make it yet. Probably I'll write some additional sentences on the really breaking changes. So something like this will be in the changelog, and so it's not just the auto-generated one, but also some additional info on what has been enabled by default, for example, which stuff got dropped and whatnot.
Yeah, I know we got the global throttle. That seems to upset everyone, or at least several people, but they are not here to discuss this, unfortunately. We removed the third-party support. I know we got that one through. But all of the breaking changes in this PR, I think, did get through. So annotation validation, strict path validation. We've lowered the annotation validation risks to high, and we disabled cross namespace support. That was all in this PR. Yeah, annotation validations. Yeah, I think we're good. Strict path is true. Yeah. So I would say definitely refer back to this discussion that we sent back. How long ago did we send this back, Ricardo? August. So we sent this back in August. They've been in Ingress for a while. Folks had the choice to enable them, but for security and CVE reasons, we're going to now enable them by default. Anything else we should probably discuss the 112?
Yeah, I think it's not really breaking in terms of people still have the option to re-enable or disable stuff.
Yeah, we just want to make sure they're aware of it.
Exactly. It's just pointing them at it, introducing it in a minor release instead of just a patch or whatnot. And maybe telling, I wouldn't even go to the reasons. I would just tell, okay, for security reasons, we changed our defaults. If you still need this and that, you can re-enable or disable it. And also maybe draw one or two scenarios about how this could affect your deployment, but not too much details.
Yeah, we've been talking about all of these for a while now. So okay, awesome. If you need help with writing that up, just let me know. I mean, we're gonna review it for the PR anyway. Are we gonna get that out? When are we thinking we're gonna get that out?
Yeah. So I think I can make it tonight.
Okay.
Like starting to text, starting. It's just a text because
Yeah.
the image got promoted. So I only need to come up with the change log, and then it's done in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Do
Yeah.
we all agree
That's
on
good.
the release being a beta 0?
Yeah, just to again indicate to folks that there are breaking changes. They should go look at the release notes. and let it sit for a month before we actually release it. It's just every time we've talked about it in meetings, or not meetings, in the community update at KubeCon, it seems that no one reads the release notes. So I'm also going to I'll also put it out on Twitter and onto the dev group. So
Okay.
doing as much as we can.
But until the stable release, we won't introduce any new features or stuff like that. So
No.
the only thing we'll do is patching. And so if something comes up in the beta, which is breaking regression, then we can still patch it. But apart from that, we'll not introduce any new features
No.
after the beta started.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, technically it's a 112, so we wouldn't introduce any new features anyway. We'd just promote the beta to 112. So,
yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I woke up to a whole bunch of messages about Ingress class name. There was a huge discussion about it. So I think from that one, I think the gist of it is like it seems like someone's trying to do something against the Ingress API, and I am not about that life. I do not want to introduce a breaking change that breaks the API just for some functionality. But that was my overall gist.
Short summary for this change is that there has been the annotation in the past, and with the annotation, you are able to directly link your controller to Ingress resources. There's no Ingress class in between, which also enables you to somehow make it completely isolated in one namespace, because if you don't need the Ingress class resource, you can disable this. Everything is inside the namespace, and then you should be able to just assign ingresses to your Ingress controller by the annotation and so on. Now that this annotation got deprecated, at least the API server, I think, is complaining about it. People, or this guy, was asking if we could somehow make or use the Ingress class name field in Ingress for the same functionality. Like if we are ignoring Ingress classes, then we can also just use the Ingress class name field. But I mean, the Ingress class name field is part of the Ingress API, and there is a specified use case for that. Like it only refers to Ingress classes, and controllers are looking up Ingress classes by their controller value and so on. And yeah, I explained it quite often. Of course, this is a regression in terms of moving from Ingress class annotation to the Ingress class name field will drop support for having Ingress or having this isolated deployment, because then you really need an Ingress class resource. But yeah, I think this was not considered when Ingress API came up, and so it's kind of a design flaw. I'm not sure. Maybe you can also tell it different.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things.
I think it's just not made for this. Full
Yeah,
stop. And we Marco, should not break it.
Sorry, there is a flag that it's called Ingress class by name.
Oh yeah.
No. That instead of relying on the on this new workflow of like getting the Ingress class by spec and so on, it would just watch by Ingress class by name, right?
Yeah, but this is a different one. This is made for the controller looking for Ingress classes by the Ingress class, by the name of the Ingress class. This is for the connection between the controller and the Ingress class resources. Okay. Then you still would need the Ingress class resource, which is cluster scopes.
Okay. So the main problem is the Ingress class. Okay, I see now.
Yeah, this
I
looks
mean,
like
the
it's
main point is, I think the main point is when we first, or when people first came up with Ingress API, and when it then went to stable state and whatnot, it was designed for, okay, there's one Ingress controller in the whole cluster, you have Ingress classes, and these resources are provided by your administrator. Users in their namespaces can only create Ingress resources and reference them to pre-created Ingress class resources. So Ingress class resources and the whole controller is in the responsibility of a cluster administrator. This is probably, I don't know, I wasn't around back then, the concept, and this is what Ingress API is targeting for, and it doesn't have on its mind that there might be an Ingress controller deployed to a single namespace, and so you don't want to and then you don't want to like have Ingress namespace Ingress class resources. So we cannot overcome this in the implementation because this would mean we are not compliant with the API anymore.
For that reason right there, it's going to be a no for me. I don't want to break the API. We already have enough issues from a security perspective, and if we're going to break the API, then it just makes things matters even worse. So I can go ahead and let them know.
The workaround implemented here or proposed here is basically we already have we have a piece of code in the Ingress controller which tells, okay, if you do not have access to the Ingress class resource, fall back and just ignore Ingress class resources everywhere. This means the store is not getting loaded, so Ingress controller does not know about Ingress classes, and wherever you want to use Ingress class resources, it's just skipping that part. This is you can also manually set this flag, this ignore Ingress class flag, and if this got enabled up here, you can see, this is in the change basically. At this part on the left side, it would just skip matching Ingress classes, and a little bit down, you could then just use this watch ingresses without Ingress class flag, and then you could easily just watch all ingresses in one namespace, for example. But what he wants to change here is going in the direction, okay, so if we are not able to access Ingress classes, like we are having this ignore Ingress class flag enabled, then just fall back to matching Ingress class name, this field, against the Ingress class value of the controller. And the latter was originally meant for matching the old Ingress class annotation. And that's the main issue.
Yeah.
And I don't want to fall back to using Ingress class name field for matching against what was meant to be for the Ingress class annotation, because the Ingress class annotation is also not part of the API.
Yeah,
I would just say that like not being able to access the Ingress class doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go to this path, right? Maybe you have some problem during your installation, or you're messed up with some role-based access control or something like that. So I would say that instead of going to this path, I would prefer that we have some explicit behavior, which is like, okay, you have this new flag where you are saying, I know I am deploying this on my own namespace. I'm going to watch everything on my own namespace. I don't care about the Ingress class logics anymore. And I mean, if we decide go into this path, and I'm going to be out of compliant with whatever Ingress API.
Well, we've already put it in our notes that we do not recommend using this for a multi-tenant environment. His issue is that this isn't a multi-tenant environment, and the cluster administrators aren't allowing them to access cluster scoped resources. So I think breaking the API and the fact that we do not recommend using this in a production multi-tenant environment, that's two reasons now we should say no to this.
Also what you just described, Ricardo, we already have this, because as soon as you're just ignoring or the Ingress class or not matching one, there is a little bit down the road is this watch Ingress without class flag. If you enable this, then the whole Ingress class name and whatever mechanism is completely being turned off. And then you could, if your Ingress controller is only able to watch ingresses of the same namespace, for example, so it's scoped, you could already limit it, but then you would not have a differentiation by Ingress class inside your namespace anymore. And this is also what would, so this change here would also then disable all the features of Ingress classes. Like if we ever would introduce some features in Ingress classes, parameters, whatnot, then this feature here would also disable it. So there is a reason for why there's Ingress class and why you should not use it and why you should not just skip it, even though it's not perfect by design because it's cluster scoped.
I think we're all in a violent agreement to not move forward with that PR. I kind of think the same thing here with this one, like disabling path overlap validation. That's just opening the door for abuse. Like I know, again, this is going to help with the zero migration, but just allowing folks, cluster administrators, to turn this on and off again is another security issue. Or we do the same thing we're doing. We allow this to go through, but we disable it by default. Again, it's up to the cluster administrator, and we set this to whatever the highest risk there is.
Yeah, not sure.
Actually, so we had some sorry, Marco. We had some recent discussion, if I recall correctly, also on some email threads about overlapping and hosts hijacking, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Don't you think that this is going to make the case worse?
Make it much easier. Yes.
Yeah, we had an email about this recently where someone was reporting something like that with overlapping.
And even if we got into the conclusion that this is how the API behaves, right? I think that this PR just goes against what we've been discussing, which was actually maybe we can put some more strict validation that says like, hey, you already have someone taking care of this host and this path, so we are not going to allow this, right? Or there is already a namespace taking care of that. There is already a namespace, so I really don't feel comfortable with this one. I got there is a point on that, but I think this is just a way to people getting and opening new CVEs, saying like, hey, now I can bypass whatever because you don't validate path overlap anymore.
Exactly. So I do favor that we just don't open this can of worms. Okay.
Just well, that was very, very nice about it.
Oh, yes.
Obviously. Yeah, no, I know. I'm just, but keep in mind if there's any, I don't think I've spoken to this person before, but if there's any way to in the conversation be like, I'm really like basically say, here are the reasons why, but here's an opportunity for you if you'd like to come, if you're working on things in this space, if there are any other opportunities we can present while saying, I'm sorry, we don't think we can accept this one, that's always ideal.
Yeah, that's also what oh, come on, names again. Antonio. That's also what Antonio told me, because some features are maybe not suitable for Ingress API, but that doesn't mean they won't get implemented anywhere. So either speak up to SIG-Network so we can find a place where to implement them, or maybe that's also the point about what I said before, like if we want to go into the direction of gateway API, for example, we could also direct people to that and tell, okay, maybe there's a place for this in gateway API. Why not contribute to gateway API, and why not? Yeah. And also, like, we have the community. We have a lot of users, and they are asking questions. They want features. We probably won't integrate them in Ingress API nor in Ingress NGINX. But maybe with a new project, with a new API, this could be a possibility, and tell, okay, let's put together all this effort on the new project.
Legit.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, and now to Shane's big question, our current roadmap.
Yeah, I'm sorry to like ask this kind of sideways. It has been a while since I've been to this meeting. I think maybe a year, and I apologize for that. Not that I've been out of communication with you all, but just where are we at with the current roadmap? What's the summary? What are the high level bullet points?
So right now we've continued the conversation around Gateway API. We do want to do that. We have a couple issues from a security perspective, like we've talked about, that we need to fix in Ingress. I think 112 will help out that conversation a lot. But I'm gonna put this on Ricardo. The crossplane work is gonna help us be able to parse the NGINX config and make it a lot easier once we do the control move back to the control plane data plane split, because we need to be able to deploy multiple instances of the NGINX proxy before we can deploy anything in the gateway. So we've talked with Gentile a lot about that. So it's, cross plane, control plane, data plane split, and then gateway. That's the high level.
I've been thinking a lot also about moving. I think we discussed about that, to use controller runtime.
Yes, we do need to refactor.
Yes, I mean, I think that as soon as I finish, let me put this really clear, right? So splitting control plane and data plane, it's not going to be an easy job. And every time I touch that, I figured out that we have other things that are like really messy around. It's like I have discussed that with Tim before, like, hey, how would be the simpler approach? Or even I took at least like 3 or 4 different approaches, right? Um, I think at least with the crossplane, even if it's a bit messy, just letting you know, like the crossplane implementation is not it's not beautiful. It's working, and my plan after that is to make it more easy for people to change that. But the crossplane one enabled us to to reduce the size of the templates and all of that Go template mess that we have before. So people trying to inject things on Nginx configuration, that thing, if I'm not gonna say it's gonna be done, it's gonna be really, really, really reduced, because F5 did a really good job on that library, right? So crossplane right now, it's just like,
Can you repeat this? F5 doing a great job with something?
this has been recorded, so they can just play back and see. So, I mean, the library, it's pretty good. Like it does have some problems. They do that focus on their side, but it's quite interesting. So crossplane one, it's almost done, right? So the implementation is done. I'm running the tests now. I can say that like 70% of the tests they are passing now. Some of them they are not passing because not of the way that we implemented, but the way that we do assertions on Ingress NGINX. So before with Go template we added quotes. Now with crossplane it add quotes if required or not. So those things we need to figure it out, right? But it's almost done. As soon as that thing is done, I want to make a alpha release with that, even if it's not beautiful yet, and tell people like, hey, it's flagged, like you should pass this flag on your controller or on your Helm chart. Go ahead and use that, because this is going to be for 113 and 114, the default. We are not going to remove the old method, right? The old Go template yet, but this is going to be the default. So this is going to disable mod security. We're not going to have mod security on this one anymore. This is going to remove the TCP UDP proxy, but also this is going to be the way that for 95% of the users that are starting using Ingress NGINX or that are deploying just by the Helm charts, this is going to be the default. Okay. Then I think we should discuss if it is worth to do the control plane data plane right now based on that, or if we should actually start before doing that, move to controller runtime and reduce the mess that I'm not going to say mess, because I think it gives the impression that the previous work made by Alejandro is a mess, which is not. It's what existed before. But by the complexity that we have on the
Sure.
controller today, we can.
It's technical debt. That's all it is.
Yes, exactly. So
This
I want
project
to.
has
I want
existed
to.
longer than most, right? So it's very
Yes,
natural for it to have
it existed
these
before controller
this kind of
runtime.
legacy. Exactly.
Yes.
Before it's
So
very natural for it to have this kind of legacy.
yes. So my plan is, before just jumping into that, making the reconciliation code easier to maintain and understand, right? And controller runtime, in my opinion, is the path for that, because today we have a bunch of like the informers and the listers, and like if you get a notification on the secret, but the secret is mapped by the ingress, blah blah blah, whatever. So before even doing the control plane and data plane, if we can get reduce the security related CVEs by usage of the crossplane, I would go to the controller runtime. I think that going to that path would enable us both to, have people working on the gateway API and people working on the split of the control plane and data plane after that. And that's when I plan to actually to step off for real from the project.
Interesting.
Famous
Well, I
last words.
appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate the overview. I've noted it up a little bit, and that helps to put a little bit more, just to harden things up in my head a little bit about what you guys are thinking. The second thing that I wanted to bring up as it relates to this project is kind of just, I have some questions. Open that discussion. I can't see the discussion really well in like the script. That's better. Thank you. So I'll try to TLDR it. I posed this question amongst there's been a couple of discussions going on for a while now about adoption and the user experience with Gateway API. I've been pushing really hard on the thread that I don't think the developer user experience of Gateway API is as good as we wanted it to be. I think we've done really well with like the cluster administrator, the gateway operator, like these roles are being served very well. But I think that a developer is like coming to Gateway API from Ingress and going, well, I used to just tell you what port my thing listened on, and now I need to know where some gateway is. I need to understand the infrastructure. And it seems to be a friction for adoption, right? So anyway, that background being what it is, this discussion is like, can we make that experience of I'm a developer, I'm just packaging my app, telling you how to deploy it with a deployment and how to expose it with an ingress, exist in Gateway API without them having to understand the infrastructure of gateways and stuff like that on the cluster. The first response I got to this posited question was, well, honestly, it weirded me out because, and I know Keith very well. It just like it seemed like it went in a completely different direction from what I was kind of getting at. But he posed some things that I hadn't thought a whole lot about. And one of them was he seems to be positioning directly at Ingress NGINX. That is what I mean. He's basically saying NGINX Ingress has these users captive. They will never move to other implementations with Gateway API because of this. And that is the real problem. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but I think that's what he's getting at.
I guess they hadn't seen our conversation where we talked about it in KubeCon Paris, where we'd like to implement Gateway API and support both, like other CNIs do, such as my current employer.
Indeed. Maybe not. And so my question is like, so this doesn't resonate with me at all. Like the idea that NGINX Ingress has users captive in such a way that they would never make it to Gateway API implementations. I'm not there yet. And my question to you guys, I guess, go ahead.
I was going to say also, like we just discussed with like this disable path overlap and some of the other things, like we're removing UDP and TCP from Ingress NGINX, and our answer is that we're moving that functionality to Gateway API. So even
we should
then,
talk about that.
Yeah, even then it's null and void. So it's like we're not implementing new features in Ingress NGINX that aren't in the API. So, and the API is frozen, so we're migrating all of that function. We would like to migrate that functionality to Gateway API in our implementation.
It is really clear for me that like at least for Ingress NGINX usage, like, and I think that we are on the right direction, right? It's that we are actually removing features because we want to move away of being like the implementation that does everything, and we want to be the implementation that does the basics, you know. And if you want to go to another gateway API implementation that does, let's say we decided we are not going to do the extended features of gateway API. I remember there were like three types of implementations on gateway API, right? The HTTP, and then the extended one, and the core, and the other ones. I can't remember the names. So I would say that it's a bad assumption from his side, at least, thinking that like first it's gonna take a short term to do that, because it's not. And maybe we are just doing a poor job of telling people that there are other implementations other than Ingress NGINX to do that, right? And then second, thinking that we are gonna, hijack all of the community efforts in favor of Ingress NGINX, which I don't think it's gonna happen, honestly.
Right.
Not
Okay.
with
You
us
started
reducing
answering.
the features.
Yeah, you started providing some perspective and answering some of the questions. That was the reason I wanted to bring this up with you guys, because I'm sitting there going like, I don't know if these pieces come together for me very well. But the other question is, do you guys, does the thing I was actually trying to get at, that like the problem statement of like, we are not as simple as Ingress in the basic cases for developers, does that resonate with you? Or do you feel like uncertain about it? Or do you like, no, I actually like Gateway API just the way it is?
I can't answer that question right now.
Okay. Just the basic thing of like, I guess, does it make sense that I'm trying to focus in on the developers didn't used to have to know about the gateway?
Yeah. So the same reason that the guy was just asking about that his cluster administrator is not letting them access cluster scoped resources. That shouldn't be an issue, or maybe it still is, but there's a better RBAC story with
Right. The
Gateway
developer
API.
shouldn't need to even care. That's the cluster. The
Yeah.
gateway operator needs to deal with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm kind of, so anyway, just think about that, I guess, stew on it. And what I'd really like, if you guys don't mind, I know it's asking a lot, but it's like everybody's time. And I want to say I appreciate how much you guys work on this thing, especially given all the noise coming in these days. But I think you guys have really good perspective. If you could join this conversation, if you feel so inclined, I would really appreciate it. I think you could bring perspective to the table. And if you can. Otherwise, I guess you kind of answered some of my questions. Thank you for kind of giving me some of your thoughts. Ricardo really got into it for me. I think the only other thing is like, you don't see a lot of users with NGINX Ingress. I mean, it's hard to quantify this, of course, because I don't think you have like deep telemetry or anything, but like you don't see a lot of users where like they have Gateway API related like use cases that Gateway API solves, but they're solving them by like doing a bunch of annotations or CRDs with NGINX Ingress. Do you, or do you? Like, is that something that seems very common thread to you guys?
There are a
So
lot of
from the top of my
limitations.
yes.
What
From
was
the
that?
top of my head, I can think at least the whole HTTP stuff where you do canaries, mutation, and other things. But I don't know.
Okay. I don't
I'm
know
not
is a fair
sure.
answer to that question. I was just curious.
Yeah, we'll give it some thought, and I think
I'm
I'll
sure
at least
we wouldn't be where we are right now with Ingress NGINX if Ingress would be this easy. Because right now I feel like 90% of Ingress NGINX is annotations and stuff that's not included in Ingress API, and Ingress NGINX is just 10% of Ingress API. Or like, sorry,
Roger that.
only 10% of Ingress NGINX are Ingress API. And I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure that developers normally quite fast get to the point where Ingress API is not enough anymore. But yes, you're right. In terms of, for them, it's quite easy to just put a bunch of annotations in the Ingress, in their Ingress manifest. So it's a yes and a no, isn't it? It's both. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
These are good thoughts, and I appreciate it. I'm going to continue to think on this. I think the only thing I would ask is if you can make the time, that discussion could really use the perspective of this project. So please do jump in there.
Awesome.
Other than that, I'm gonna intend to try to be more present in this meeting and try to be more helpful. So I'll stew on some things for a while. I'll come back and reach out to me too if there are ways I can be helpful to you all.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. I do have unfortunately, I have a customer meeting that I need to attend to at noon. So we've covered a lot of high level things, and folks, be ready for 112. There is my reminder. Be ready for 112 when it comes out, and please give us feedback. We don't know if anything's wrong unless folks tell us. So with that, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
It's next week, just one question. Is next week, or I don't know, the week after already the week where time zones and daytime saving is being changed and where